Hello there and welcome to episode 15 of Colonization Project. Right now we are unlocking a few tech nodes before moving on to the first launch of this episode. And this launch involves us carrying 2 satellites into orbit on a brand new launch vehicle, which is comprised of 2 solid rocket motors for the first stage, which gives us a bit of a boost off the launch pad. And also, actually, I'm not sure what I just said that for. But yeah, the first stage is 2 solid rocket motors, and the third stage is this liquid-fueled Terrier engine with a fuel tank, of course, and a probe core and some ullage motors, but that's about it. Oh, and also a fairing, I guess. But this is our new launch vehicle. It's called the Cyclops. And you can see it has a little fairing adapter right there, so it can carry 2 payloads in 1 rocket to make this rocket as cheap as possible, because I used the solid rocket motors for the first stage because those were the cheapest option I could use, because solid rocket motors, they're pretty cheap to manufacture and pretty easy to manufacture. And since we're not reusing any of this, we're not reusing any part of the Cyclops launch vehicle because it's not really worth it, as shown by the Pleiades launch vehicle a bit earlier in the series. It's not really worth it to recover it, so I made it as cheap as possible, which I think was successful. It only takes about a week to produce one of these rockets. But you may be wondering, why call it the Cyclops launch vehicle? Well, I have a story behind that. So, the old launch vehicle of this size was called Pleiades. This new one, for the new launch vehicle, I don't want to call it Pleiades Block 2 because it was so different, because it has 3 stages, not 2, and its first 2 is solid rocket motors. So I was like, what's in the Pleiades Nebula? And I couldn't think of any star names that would work. I mean, I do know there are stars in the Pleiades Nebula, but the star names that are in the Pleiades Nebula didn't seem to work out for a launch vehicle. So I turned to games, other games besides Kerbal Space Program, because there is no Pleiades Nebula in Kerbal Space Program. At least not yet. I mean, I guess someone could add it with a mod or something, but that's going to be kind of hard because it's like 200 light years away. That's going to be a really long travel time. But then I turned to games besides Kerbal Space Program, and my first one up was Elite Dangerous, which is it's a pretty good game. I do enjoy playing Elite Dangerous, and in the game there are Thargoids, and Thargoids are an alien species in Elite Dangerous that lives in the Pleiades Nebula. Well, I mean, they live around the Pleiades Nebula. They could live in it. But that's what I decided. But Thargoid didn't sound like a right name for a launch vehicle either. So I was like, what do they make? And then I was like, oh, they make the Cyclops Interceptor, which is one of the ships that they make. So I was like, why not call it the Cyclops? So that's how it got its name. And it sort of makes sense, I guess, because we don't use any dual engine clusters. So if you look up from it, you only see like 1 core. So I guess I'm not sure, but now we are following the second stage to its explosive demise on the surface of the Mun. I decided to deorbit it into the surface of the Mun instead of into Kerbin's atmosphere because we haven't visited the surface of the Mun since like episode 6, and I think it's a lot cooler to have it collide with the Mun rather than just deorbit it into Kerbin's atmosphere. And I mean, the Mun was there anyway. We didn't have to spend much fuel to get it there. But now we are launching a crewed Starship on the same booster we've used for the entire series. New Starship, same booster, because, there's really no need to produce a second booster unless we lose this one, which hasn't happened yet. But since I like naming my crewed spacecraft, this one is in fact named, and it is called the Enterprise because Starship Enterprise. You know, Starship Enterprise, Star Trek. Anyways, now we're just getting into orbit, much like any other starship would. And yeah, that's about it. Not much to talk about here. But now we can reuse the booster, like always. This time trying to get it back to the launch site. And by doing that, we get it back to the launch site, which is what the real Starship is supposed to do. I mean, as far as I know, it's not landing on a drone ship. Normal drone ships are too small to land a giant super heavy booster on. But, I mean, here we don't have that problem. I mean, our drone ship can land a super heavy booster just fine. But you can't see we've landed. We did break off all the landing legs, so we're going to have to replace them. But, oh well, those are expendable. I mean, they're not supposed to be expendable, but they're more expendable than the rest of the rocket is. Now we are taking it out to Minmus. I didn't mention the goal of this mission. We are taking it out to the Minmus orbital outpost so we can recycle the crew, because I think the old crew is becoming homesick or something. And I also sort of wanted to make a crewed starship because they're pretty cool. You can see, I'm going to put this in the next episode. Actually, I might be able to put it in this episode. You might have already seen it because I might have just added it in post-processing. I'm not sure what you would call it. Post-video editing. I might edit it there. I'm going to do this in the next episode, though. Guarantee. I mean, it might be next episode. Yeah, episode 16. I haven't edited episode 17 yet. Episode 15, we will be launching a crewed spacecraft, and I've decided to put the name of the crew in like the top right corner, so you can know who exactly is on the spacecraft. If I don't put it in, if I forget to put it in post-processing, then I will tell you the crew makeup right now. It is Jebediah Kerman, Bill Kerman, Bob Kerman, and Valentina Kerman. So all of the original Kerbals. So that's the crew. You might have already seen it, so I might just be repeating information. But oh well, it's better to be safe than sorry, I guess. But now we are repositioning the nuclear tug again for a second time in 2 episodes. But this time it's actually for a real purpose, because right now the Starship cannot dock to the only available docking port that's not on the industrial segment of the space station. So what we're going to do is we are going to reposition the nuclear tug to a place where it can go, and then we can attach Starship to a science lab where Starship can go. So just a bit of orbital repositioning there. But we're also not carrying any cargo on this because crewed Starship at least, does not have any cargo bays on it. I mean, it might in the future, but this model right here in Kerbal Space Program, it does not. So, I just retracted some of the solar panels there because otherwise, the Starship wouldn't be able to fit in there if the solar panel wasn't retracted. But we're not carrying any cargo on this except a bit of life support, because it's always good to carry a bit of extra life support on a mission, because it allows you to refill the station's life support. But yeah, that's about it. We have docked, and we can now transfer all the crew of the old crew back into the what's it called? The space shuttle, and we can send them back home. And yeah, that's about it. But right now we are just getting the crew. Actually, I'm not sure what we're doing right now. Oh yeah, we are getting the new crew into where they are supposed to. Oh, we not only have Jebediah, Bill, Bob, and Valentina. We also have, I believe, Tom Kerman, who is our second scientist on this mission, and he will be in a science lab researching data for the remainder of the year. I'm just kidding. He's probably not going to be up there for a year. I mean, in a year or like 40 days or something. We do actually have another Duna transfer window coming up. And in that Duna transfer window, I want to send crew to Duna. Because we really have nothing else to do around Duna. But before that, we have an Eve transfer window coming up. And I'm not going to send crew to Eve before we do it to Duna. Because Eve is a very hostile place. And you don't really want to go there when you don't know the basics of interplanetary travel with Kerbals. So we're sending them to Duna first, and in the Eve transfer window, we are going to be sending, I don't know, like a rover or something, maybe like a helicopter over to Eve, because we don't want to waste the transfer window unless it's to like Moho. Nobody likes Moho. I mean, I do like Moho. It's just really expensive to get there, and you know, transfer windows come to Moho like every 90 days or so. So if we miss one transfer window to Moho, it's fine. But if we miss a transfer window to Eve or Duna, we will. If there's a transfer window to Eve or Duna, we're going to take it. Because that's just more science. Then Moho, we can just do it every 90 days. But you can see we are bringing Explorer home back to the Kerbal Space Center, which is actually in a really convenient place. We don't have to do any re-orbit burn, I guess that's what you would call it. Like normally we aerobrake into a lower orbit and then we normally aerobrake into a lower orbit and then we perform a re-orbit burn. But here we can just go straight to the Space Center. We don't need any kind of burn like that. So it's nice to see everything lined up almost perfectly. But that does mean we enter the atmosphere a bit steep and fast. So things do get a little toasty, but thankfully the thermal tiles on the space shuttle are more than capable of handling a bit of heat. But I noted we are going to overshoot, so we do perform a very high G maneuver right there. But thankfully, the crew is fine. They think they can handle like 15 Gs for half a second. That makes perfect sense. We also end up flying upside down there, so we're definitely performing safe maneuvers with the space shuttle. It's definitely designed to pull 15G maneuvers and fly upside down, definitely. But you can see we have landed, and we can move on to the next launch, if we do have a next launch. Yeah, I think we do. I thought that was the end of this episode, but it is not. We do have more things to do around Duna, which is what we're doing right now. The Phobos, is this Phobos? No, it's Deimos. Deimos has arrived at Duna, and it is going to go into an orbit around Ike. And that's about it, because that's all it's supposed to do. It's not supposed to land. I mean, it could land. It could very well land on Duna, but we already have a lander for that. And, you know, it'll look kind of weird to do that. And we also have a bunch of scanners on this spacecraft that only work while in orbit. So we sort of need to keep it in orbit. I mean, it's also not acting as a relay, but I mean, we don't really need a relay around Duna. But now we can perform a mid-course correction and head off to Duna. Actually, we're not. We are already at Duna. We are heading off to Ike, which isn't that far away from Duna. I mean, actually, it's... No. It's actually really not that far away from Duna. It's about the size of the Mun, if I remember correctly, maybe a bit smaller. But it's really close to Duna, which means that actually it's in a geostationary orbit around Duna. So I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here. It's like if the Mun was like halfway in a lower orbit, like take the orbit of the Mun, divide it in two, and you sort of have Ike's orbit, I guess. I could be very wrong here, but I think that's the best I can do from memory. But now we can get into orbit with the orbiter and start collecting a bunch of science. I do have to lower my orbit here because we couldn't get any of the science from space low above Ike. So we just lower the orbit so we can get all that science, transmit it all back, and I don't know, profit with the science we just gained. But after we've collected all the science we could possibly get, we can head back up to our apoapsis, circularize our orbit, and start scanning the surface for like resources and stuff. I mean, we might make a mining colony on not Minmus. We're definitely going to make one on Minmus, but we might make one on Ike in the future. I mean, that's what colonization is, I guess. I mean, that's not the definition of colonization, but I think mining colonies are a byproduct. No, they're not a byproduct of colonization. They're almost essential to colonization because you need the resources to make the colony self-sufficient, unless you want to be shipping like tons of life support over there. But I don't know, we just need the resource scans because it looks cool, I guess. But now the Traveler Space Telescope has arrived at its periapsis, and we can get it into a lower orbit so it can start scanning for asteroids and preventing Kerbin from being destroyed by them. I mean, it's not preventing them, it's just warning us of them. But now we are unlocking advanced motors, short-term habitation, and launching... I forget what this is. Let me try and remember. I believe, if I remember correctly, this is a mining module that's going to Minmus. So what I want to do is I want to start colonizing Minmus. And to do that, we need ISRU. ISRU stands for In Situ Resource Utilization, and that's a very fancy word for mining the crust of Minmus until it has no more resources to mine. So that means we need to send up miners to Minmus. We're not sending up Kerbal miners, we're sending up autonomous miners, which isn't really the best of ideas because our drills will not operate at peak efficiency. They will actually operate at very minimal efficiency. But I didn't know that, so this will probably be abandoned sooner or later, which is kind of bad because this thing was quite expensive. It was quite expensive to make because it has like a fission reactor and drills and ISRU and expensive antennas and all that. So it's a pretty expensive probe that we're probably going to abandon because I didn't know the how to use ISRU. It's been a while since I've actually used ISRU in Kerbal Space Program. So but what I was planning to do when I launched this was I was planning on making a liquid fuel and oxidizing plant. That's what the drills are for. They're to mine the crust of Minmus and convert that into liquid fuel and oxidizer. And that means we won't have to ship up any new materials from Kerbin. I mean, we still we'll still have to ship up some materials, but liquid fuel and oxidizer we wouldn't have to ship up if this actually worked, which it doesn't. But that was the plan. Plan didn't really go too well, as you'll see, because I don't know which spots on Minmus have the highest resource concentration. So I just landed it in like the flats, and it said it couldn't mine there. So we are probably going to upgrade it sooner or later with better, more efficient drills and stuff. But that will not be in this episode, the next episode, or maybe the episode after. But it'll eventually happen. I mean, we gotta colonize Minmus somehow. And we also gotta colonize the Mun somehow, which we'll be launching something in the next episode, but we won't be doing we won't be doing anything with it for a couple episodes after. You can see I do have a lot of footage that I need to actually record. Actually, I've already recorded it. I have a lot of footage that I've already recorded, and I just need to edit it all and record post-commentary. I have up to episode 16 edited, but episode 17 and on, I don't have anything for it, really. But we're eventually going to get to that point, where I do have episodes 17 and 16 out. I mean, episodes 16 and 17. But right now, we are trying to land the mining module. I just decided the Great Flats because, you know, it's a flat area. We can build a base there. That's basically the entire reason I chose it. But that's about it. And I think that's all the rest of the episode is going to be. Yep. We only have about 25 seconds left in this episode. So, I don't know, somewhere around there. But we don't have very long left in this episode. I think all we do is land, and then the episode is over. But we will be landing soon. And by soon, I mean a couple of seconds, which I mean right now we have landed. And that will be the end of this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.